We're ready? Hey, folks, Dr. Joe here. Glad you could be with us today. Hope everyone's having a good day. Hey, listen, great show today. What we're going to talk about today is brain function. We're going to focus specifically on Alzheimer's. Now, you're thinking to yourself, you don't have Alzheimer's. Well, we're going to talk about prevention because what happens in Alzheimer's, what it means, and it starts today. If you're going to get Alzheimer's, it's happening. You're starting it today. So we're going to talk about that. If you're new to the show, the way this works is I do two 24-minute segments. I'll talk for 24 minutes. In that time, if you have any health questions whatsoever, not just on neurology or brain function, write it in your platform, whatever platform you're on. And Heather, my producer today, is going to read me the question at the break, and then we'll go ahead and answer the questions. And then we'll do another 24-minute segment, okay? So, Heather, you could stop the clock. It started running there. If you could stop that and just reset it to 0. Perfect. And that's how it works. So 24 minutes, answer questions, 24 minutes, ready to go. So you ready, Miss Heather? Okay. When I clap my hand, she's going to start the clock. We're going to get going here. Hey, folks, Dr. Joe Esposito here. I am very happy that you're here today, and we have an amazing show today. What we're going to talk about today is brain function and what you're doing today and the effect it's going to have on your brain later on, specifically about Alzheimer's and dementia. Now, dementia is a general term. Alzheimer's is the most common form of dementia. But if you're going to get it, it's starting today. And we need to talk about that. Because in the past 2 decades, there's been 73,000 research articles published on Alzheimer's. That's a general number there. Very little progress has been made. 73,000 research articles, almost no progress. The reason that a cure for Alzheimer's might actually be impossible is because when you lose the function, the brain cells die, they lose their cognitive function, the patients, they have these fatally flawed neurological networks, and dead nerve cells cannot be brought back to life. So the nerves, the cells die is what it is. Consequently, you replace them with new brain cells, if you can, if that's possible. Now, the good news is the brain has something called plasticity. Plasticity is the body's ability, like plastic, to reshape and remold itself. So the good news is the brain oftentimes can rewire itself. Depends how much damage there is. But even if we could generate new brain cells, the person might grow. Those brain cells store memories. They're going to forget those memories. So they may, if there was some miracle way to, you have 1,000 brain cells, we replace them with 1,000 new brain cells. Those new brain cells don't have the memory stored that the old ones have. So the person wouldn't be the same person that came back. They wouldn't have that memory there. So developing drugs to clear out the plaque, that's what happens is plaque forms around the brain, around the cells, and that prevents them from functioning normally. But the cells are dead. And so the analogy, I like this one analogy in an article, it's like we're going to bulldoze all the tombstones to see if we can raise the dead out of the cemetery. We can get rid of the plaque, but the cells are already dead. So we don't need to get rid of the plaque. What we need to do is prevent the plaque from happening. So many Alzheimer's victims may not even choose to live because they'd be alive, but they wouldn't know who they are if we don't generate, there's no new cells to replace the old ones and have that memory there. And so it's not really a good approach. And again, with 73,000 articles written in the past 20 years, we've made very little progress because we may not be able to fix it, but we may be able to stop it. And that's the really good news. So even if they're advanced, I'm going to talk about some studies later on, even if they're in advanced Alzheimer's, we may be able to stop it where it is and then try to retrain the rest of the brain cells. They'll never be like they used to be, but hopefully we can see some progress in that. Because I think the approach we've been taking so far isn't really the right approach. Keep trying to, like I said, the cells are dead. We can't revive them. Clear out the plaque. That's not the problem. The problem is what caused the plaque. The problem is what caused the cells to die. We're treating the symptoms. We're not treating the cause. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So prevention of Alzheimer's is probably the key. And that's the way I want to approach this. Because no matter where you are, we want to prevent it from getting worse. We talk about prevention of heart disease, diabetes, cancer. Very few people talk about preventing a brain attack. We can prevent a heart attack. We don't talk about preventing a brain attack. And that, if we could do that, I think the dementia, if we look at it as a mind attack or a brain attack, we'd see some really good results. It needs to be prevented by controlling vascular risks like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, and the lack of blood flow to the brain. That's the approach that seems to be showing a lot of promise in the research before Alzheimer's sets in. Now, it doesn't set in one day. Alzheimer's and dementia are slow processes. In fact, it's called a long goodbye because you don't get it overnight. You remember a little bit and then you forget things. And we all have those things. You walk in a room and go, why was I here? You have what we call a senior moment, right? Well, those senior moments get more and more, and people are very good at hiding it. They cover it up, they lie, they set up their lives so that they don't get caught, and that's human nature. And you don't want to admit to yourself or to others that you have dementia coming on, so you try to set up a life that doesn't allow people to find out you have it. But we want to deal with things like a healthy diet, physical exercise, mental exercises, chiropractic care to open up the nerve supply to the brain. Again, there's not a lot of research on this. This is what I feel would be the approach to take, and that's where the research seems to be leaning now, and I'm supporting that 100%. Now, if we could just reduce diabetes, just let's take diabetes, one thing. If we can reduce diabetes by 10%, we would reduce Alzheimer's by 25%. That's how serious diabetes and the link to Alzheimer's is. A small reduction in all these risk factors could potentially prevent hundreds of thousands of patients and their families being devastated emotionally, financially. It would change the world. And the reason I'm so passionate about this, I know Bruce Willis was just, the actor was just diagnosed with dementia, and it's getting a lot of press now. So I got excited. But as I drive to work, I drive past what was a senior housing development. It was okay. I don't know how many residents they had, but it was, moderate size. Well, they had a piece of land next to where the place is, and it was on a little back road, and it had woods on it, a little parking lot, where they're building this huge memory care center. And it's to house people with dementia and Alzheimer's. And it's a very expensive proposition. Okay, if you look at just going to senior housing, maybe $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month for low end and mid-range ones, depending what state you're in. New York could be $15,000 a month. Memory care is way higher than that. So it's a very profitable business to be in, memory care and taking care of these people, taking care of them, keeping them alive, basically. And nobody's doing anything that I can see in the senior housing world to change that. I'm trying to make that change. I'm working with a senior housing group now to discuss these findings, what the research is showing, and let's implement this. And the cool part is, let's assume it doesn't work. So what? It didn't work. But if it does work, which the research is showing that it should and will, it's going to change hundreds of thousands of lives. It's going to change the way healthcare is provided to people with memory and dementia issues. And I'm going to talk about Parkinson's if I have time today. If not, I'll do a whole nother show on Parkinson's. Spoiler alert. Fava beans have been shown to help people with Parkinson's because they're high in something called L-DOPA. L-DOPA converts into dopamine. Dopamine helps suppress the Parkinson shakes. So a serving of fava beans a day. That's a spoiler alert for my next show. So the nice part is that if we can reduce diabetes by 10%, we reduce Alzheimer's by 25%. Diabetes, type 2 diabetes, is so easy to manage with diet. It's almost 100% preventable. It's almost always treatable. And in many cases, it's reversible. Diabetes, 25%. If we get rid of that, we're also getting rid of dementia. How easy is this? And yet very few people ever look at that approach. That's why we're talking about it today. So simple modifiable factors such as diet have found conclusively to modulate the risk of Alzheimer's disease to the degree suggested by this research, the world would change dramatically. 2 diseases reduced dramatically. One approach, simply by changing the diet. Growing evidence that dietary patterns such as the Mediterranean diet are associated with lower Alzheimer's risks as well as slower cognitive decline, which means they lose their memory slower. And so what part of the Mediterranean diet seems to work? Now, the Mediterranean diet, traditionally a lot of fruits and vegetables, beans, nuts, very low in meat and dairy products, and high in seafood. They tend to tease out the protective components. Fish consumption showed no benefit. So they took the fish consumption. Was that part of the Mediterranean diet that worked? No. Neither did moderate alcohol consumption. So drinking in moderation, no effect on Alzheimer's. The two critical pieces that appeared to be the thing that made the biggest difference with the Mediterranean diet for diabetics, and here we're talking about Alzheimer's, were, guess what? Fruits and vegetables. Vegetable consumption, the ratio between unsaturated fats and saturated fats, which is plant fats versus animal fats. So the thing that's causing the problem, big problem, one of it, is the animal fats, and the things that seem to be slowing down and helping it dramatically is the plant fats. Now, you can eat too much fat, okay? So the Mediterranean diet uses olive oil. A tablespoon of olive oil is 120 calories. Let's just look at the calorie component. That's a lot of calories for a tablespoon. So I don't recommend you use a lot of processed oils. Now, I had an avocado today. Avocados are high in fat, but that's a good fat. Had some pistachios today. Pistachios are high in fat. It's a good fat. But it's in the whole food form. It hasn't been processed out. If I drank avocado oil or pistachio oil, wouldn't be nearly as good for me. In fact, would probably be bad for me as if I ate the avocado and the pistachios. Follow that? So even though it's an olive oil, extra virgin organic, it's still processed foods. We're trying to get as close to the whole food as we possibly can. Studies across 11 countries. Fat consumption appeared to be the most closely correlated with the prevalence of Alzheimer's disease. That sentence alone should change the whole research. 11 countries, we've studied it. The higher saturated fat consumption you had, the higher correlation to Alzheimer's disease. And saturated fats comes from where? Animal products. The lowest fat intake, rates such as in China, had the best results. The highest fat intake, United States, had the worst results. Once again, correlation is pretty clear here. This is grouping all fats together, animal fats, plant fats, all fats put together. Harvard researchers examined the relationship between major fat types and cognitive change over 4 years. They used 6,000 healthy older women. They found the higher the saturated fat intake was associated with poorer trajectory of cognition and memory. The more saturated fat you ate, the higher the risk of Alzheimer's and other dementia. So the worse trajectory, meaning it moved forward in a worse way. Women with the highest saturated fat intake had 60 to 70% greater odds of worse change in brain function. Higher the saturated fat, 60 to 70% worse outcome for brain function. The magnitude of cognitive change associated with saturated fat consumption was equivalent to about 6 years of aging. So when they took the general studies and they put them together, they found that people with a higher saturated fat diet their brains were 6 years older, or people that didn't eat a lot of saturated fat, their brain was 6 years younger. That was the big difference there. So what if we had these answers and they're not being looked at? That concerns me. What if one already has Alzheimer's? Let's look at it that way. Somebody already has Alzheimer's. They found adherence to the Mediterranean diet may affect not only the risk of Alzheimer's, but the subsequent disease course. Is it going to get worse? You're going to die sooner? The people that adhered to the Mediterranean diet very well had only 20% of those had a higher adherence. The people that followed strictly died. Okay, this is over a 5-year period. 20% of them that really followed it strictly died. Twice that for people that followed it somewhat, and those who followed it, who really didn't follow it at all, low adherence, more than half the people in the study were dead. Wow. So if you have it, we can reduce the risk of other diseases, and we can reduce the risk of dying. And in this case, 50%. By 10 years, 90% of the people were dead who didn't follow it, and by the end of the study, everyone who didn't follow it closely were dead. So the answers are pretty clear. There really isn't a big issue here as to what's happening. We know exactly what's happening. So I want to talk about not just the saturated fats, but the role of endotoxins in Alzheimer's and dementia. So when it comes to cognitive decline, I talked a lot about other chemicals. We talked about glycotoxins. Glycotoxins are created when you have high fat, high protein foods exposed to high heat, broiling, barbecuing, get those grill marks. Those grill marks are glycotoxins and extremely toxic to the body as well as the brain. What I want to talk about now is something called endotoxins, which are inflammatory components of bacteria that end up in your bloodstream. And the presence of these toxins are related to Alzheimer's? The answer is yes. Now, folks, if you're just joining us, I'm Dr. Joe Esposito, and you're probably thinking to yourself, this is crazy stuff. I've never heard any of this. Why have I never heard it before? Well, I try to sort through all the research and then give you what the new research is showing and what directions to go in. Now, in the Atlanta area, we have offices in Marietta, Duluth, Stockbridge, and West Cobb. We're chiropractic, pain management, nutrition clinics. If you have a health issue, let's say neck pain, back pain, shoulder pain, numbness, tingling, digestive issues, nutritional concerns, my team of doctors and I would love to be your doctors. If you'd like to make an appointment to come see us, go to my website, drjoe.com, drjoe.com. You can book an appointment right online. You can call us. We accept people with all insurances. It depends what your insurance covers, but we accept you. Even if you don't have insurance, which is about 40% of our patients, we have payment plans available. And chiropractic care, by the way, is the most effective, least expensive treatment for back pain. In our office, we do back pain, plus we do all joint pain, neck pain, shoulder pain, wrist, feet, ankle. And we add nutrition to it, and we work on the digestive system to get the digestive system working properly too. So if you're ready to get well and you want to make an appointment, go to my website, drjoe.com. You can book it right online. If you're ever in a car accident, this kind of aside from what we're talking about today, if you're ever in a car accident, if the car's damaged, you're damaged. I've never seen it any other way. I've treated thousands and thousands, maybe tens of thousands of auto accident cases. I consult with insurance companies and doctors and hospitals. I've never seen it where the car was damaged and the occupants weren't, even if you don't have pain, because 90% of the nerves don't feel pain. Like Alzheimer's. Doesn't hurt, but it's still a problem. So if you want to come see us, drjoe.com, we would love to be your doctors. Normally the first visit is $940. We've reduced that for my listeners to $299. That's an exam, x-rays, consultation, first treatment, and then on the follow-up visit, going over the x-rays and a complete nutrition evaluation. All of our patients get a nutrition evaluation. I don't know of any other clinic that does that, because I don't want to just treat your symptoms. I want to treat the cause. So drjoe.com, we'd love to see you in our offices. So I want to talk about this endotoxin in Alzheimer's. We're going to talk about prevention, how to prevent it with diet. We got a lot to cover, B vitamins, vitamin D. It's a lot to cover, so let me keep rocking on here. Having a high cholesterol level in your early 40s is associated with increased risk of Alzheimer's and vascular dementia decades later. Again, dementia is loss of brain function, no cognitive function. Alzheimer's is one form of it. So if you have high cholesterol in your 40s, your risk skyrockets. And we can give you medication to lower your cholesterol, and sometimes that's absolutely necessary. But I want you to consider whatever medication you're taking, high blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol, erectile dysfunction, whatever it is, I want you to consider also looking at the nervous system, because pinched nerves affect everything, including the organs. I want you to consider your diet, because that's a huge player. And I want you to consider certain supplements. For example, with circulation to the brain and other parts of the body, I like to take something called Dr. Joe's nitric oxide support. Nitric oxide opens up the blood vessels to the brain, the sex organs, the heart, the lungs, the liver, the spleen. So nitric oxide, I take it every day. And it gives you a rush of energy. I had a test done the other day on my blood vessels, and the doctor was shocked. He said, you have the blood vessels of somebody much younger, even a teenager. He's seen people, teenagers, with healthy blood vessels like mine. I had a brain study done. I have the brain of somebody half my age. So if this lifestyle didn't work, I'd be doing something else. I'm following the science. This is what the science says. There's no reason why you shouldn't follow the science either. And it's funny with the cholesterol, doesn't have to be a big, high, crazy cholesterol to have a difference. 57% higher risk of developing Alzheimer's if your cholesterol is 240 versus 200. Now, 240, doctors say, well, it's early onset, high cholesterol, maybe put you on some medication. That little jump, 57% increase in Alzheimer risk. And where do you get high cholesterol from? Almost always from animal fats and saturated fats. 1 in 100 people have genetically high cholesterol. 99 out of 100 can do very well in most cases with diet and supplementation. So if you're on statins, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not telling you to take it or not take it. I am saying let's try incorporating diet and exercise and supplements, and let's see what happens. I never say never, but it's very rare that we don't see amazing results. And the biggest complaint I get from my patients is, why didn't I do that sooner? Whether it's nutrition, cholesterol, diabetes, obesity, digestive issues, pain, the biggest complaint we get, why didn't I do this sooner? The answers are there in many cases. You just got to follow up with them. So don't think the answers don't exist. They certainly do. But if you have that higher cholesterol level, it can block off the arteries going to your brain, and it's called arteriosclerosis. That's plaquing, hardening the arteries. And the same one that causes heart attacks and strokes chokes off the blood supply to the memory centers in your brain. So we got to get good circulation going to the brain if you want to prevent a lot of these issues. This is why high saturated fat has been found in association with the development of the worst global cognitive function and memory decline, and apparent acceleration of the aging of the brain, as if you were 6 years older. So again, as you start to cut off the blood supply, we're taking off 6 years from your life. That's just one thing. Now you can cut down on saturated fat, cutting down on cheeses, cakes, ice creams, chickens, meats. Those are essentially the top sources of the American diet, most food in the American diet. But pork, burgers, beef, animal proteins are saturated fats. Now, coconut oil is a saturated fat, but it's a different kind of saturated fat. I won't bore you with the details, but the molecules are not as tightly bound. So there's that. Just 5 days of a high-fat, low-carb diet impairs energy metabolism to the heart as well as cognitive function. So just eating it for a week, the standard American diet, can affect your brain. So that concludes such diets are detrimental to the heart and the brain. Now, you're thinking the impaired energy production may be accounted for because the brain dysfunction, maybe it was glycotoxins called the advanced glycated end products, the cooking of the meats. We talked about that, the charring or the grilling of the meats, that creates advanced glycated end products. You want to cut those out because if you're going to cook meat, I want you to boil it. Don't get those grill marks. No high heat, because the high heat changes the molecular structure, and that's where the problem comes in. So this is a headline. I laughed when I read this because I thought my audience is going to get this. Metabolic endotoxemia, a potential underlying mechanism for the relationship between dietary fat intake and the risk of cognitive impairment in humans. What that's saying is endotoxins are pro-inflammatory components from certain bacteria like E. coli that are released when the bacteria die. They end up being absorbed into the gut, end up in the bloodstream, and of course that causes problems. And where does it come from? Not surprisingly, meats that are contaminated with these bacteria. Whether it's red or white, the bacteria contaminate the meat. They're all contaminated to some extent. And having elevated level of these dead bacteria in your blood circulating can be detrimental to your health, including things like obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and depression. So I had a patient come in the other day, and they said, well, Dr. Joe, I ain't giving up my hamburgers. I said, okay, so what's your health goals? And I said, want to lose weight, wants to get better circulation. He had erectile dysfunction, had high blood pressure, high cholesterol, on all these medications. And I said, if you're not willing to make a change, what are you willing to do? Well, I want you to tell me what to do. And I told him. And it was like banging my head against the wall. These are the things that you're going to have to do to change if your goals are to hopefully someday, maybe, get off these medications, start to have sexual function again, and save your brain. I ain't going to do it. I said, I don't know what to tell you. I only have these answers. There is no magic pill that's going to solve this problem. So he did say he was going to start taking some supplements and he would think about it. I said, okay. So if you put people on a high-fat, low-carb diet for 5 days, the endotoxic level, these dead bacteria levels, skyrocket. So the bottom line is cutting back and cutting out a lot of these toxins. All right, folks, got to go to a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about how to prevent, the studies are showing now, how to prevent dementia and brain function issues. Now, if you have any questions, you can send them to me through my website, drjoe.com, drjoe.com, to make an appointment to come see us, not just for dementia, but overall health, drjoe.com. And follow us on social media at Dr. Joe Esposito and your podcast service, Dr. Joe for the Health of It. I'm Dr. Joe Esposito, drjoe.com. Bam. Segment 1 done. Do we have any questions?
No, we do not.
That means I get to stay on my roll here, baby. Good. All right, reset the clock. And folks, if you're watching on social media, if you have any questions, type them in at the end of 24 minutes. Heather will read me the questions. I'll answer them for you. If not, you're so enthralled, perfect. Love that. Ready? Hey, folks, Dr. Joe Esposito. If you're just joining us, welcome. If you stayed with us, thank you. I appreciate that. What we're talking about today is the new research on brain function, dementia, and Alzheimer's. Now, Alzheimer's is a type of dementia, form of dementia. There's different forms of dementia. Alzheimer's is one of them. And what we covered in the first part is we talked about that eating a good plant-based diet seems to be the best approach to keep the brain healthy and prevent things like dementia. Because once the brain cells are dead and the memory is dead with that cell, it really can't just grow a new brain cell because that brain cell won't have that memory that that dead cell stored. And so people don't remember their family, their friends, who they are, where they are. And if you ever dealt with somebody with dementia, it's very, very heartbreaking. At first you think they're joking around. And who are you? And do I know you? Yeah, I'm your son. I'm your daughter. I don't know you. And you think they're joking, but you realize that that brain cell is dead. They don't have recollection of that. Now, they may have memories stored in other brain cells, and so with therapy, you might be able to go through old pictures or show videos or movies and start to rekindle some of those memories. But you got to stop causing the problem. It's like pouring gasoline on the fire and saying, why isn't the fire going out? So you got to start looking at that way as prevention is the key. We talk about heart disease prevention, diabetes prevention, obesity prevention. Now we're talking today about brain prevention, preventing a brain attack as opposed to a heart attack. So double-blind randomized crossover trial study, that's the best kind there is, demonstrated a single meal high in saturated fat can impede attention, and that's the meaning of cognitive ability to distinguish target stimuli from distractors on a computer game. Okay, look for the apple and they have other things going around. One meal can impede that. Compare with the identical meal of the same amount of fat, but from nuts, seeds, and avocados. The cognitive deficit presented for 5 hours after the meal. So, you eat every 5 hours. You eat saturated fats every 5 hours. You are starting to see dementia. You never see an improvement because you just keep restocking the brain with saturated fat, and it keeps short-circuiting essentially the brain and shutting it down. One meal has an impact for 5 hours, and then it's cumulative as time goes on. Now, the two ways to cut down these endotoxic bursts after meals. We talked about the endotoxic burst, which is the bacteria that you find in the meat that are dying and getting into the brain. One is to not eat so many meals in the first place. Now, if you do eat meat and dairy, the addition to fiber can blunt or slow down this endotoxic release that can be affecting the brain. So they did a study. They did a sausage and egg muffin, and they got this, what they call the endotoxin bomb. They were able to measure these dead bacteria toxic reactions in the blood. Then they gave the person same meal with Fiber One original cereal, high fiber meal, right? High fiber cereal. That would be about 30 grams of fiber, and it seemed to really reduce those toxins getting into the brain, preventing that bump for 3 hours after a meal. So just by eating a high fiber meal. Now, 30 grams of fiber is a lot. That's why we're eating something really super concentrated. So simply by eating high fiber with your meals, you can reduce the risk of these toxins getting into the brain. How simple is that? So if you're not willing to make changes, at least take a very large amount of fiber to go with your meal. Now, I always say I'll negotiate on everything. So I wish I didn't have to negotiate. I wish you just don't eat the stuff. But if you're still going to eat it, high fiber seems to have a very positive effect. Now, it's not perfect. Not having it is the best. Recent investigations reported higher abundance of exotoxins in brains of patients with Alzheimer's on autopsy. If you have Alzheimer's, when they cut you open after you're dead, they found these endotoxins very high in the memory centers of the brain. That's the region of the brain that develops the earliest and has the most profound neuropathology in Alzheimer's. It's a part of the brain that's affected the most. So the endotoxins were concentrated right there, slap dab in the middle of the brain where the memory is stored. Now, for these and a lot of other reasons, proper nutrition has been proposed as a promising non-medical strategy to prevent cognitive decline and dementia. It was proposed. I have to laugh at that. Proposed by the scientific community as a potential way to go. Why isn't it being implemented? And I don't know personally of any places that are implementing it. So what if, and I always say this, what if you do what I say? If I'm wrong, so what? I'm wrong. I blew it. You still have dementia. Your brain still dies. You shorten your life expectancy dramatically. People don't know who you are. It costs your family their whole life savings in many cases just to keep you alive. But if I'm right, which is the studies now are pointing, and this is not me talking, this is the scientific research, because I've never done these studies. If the studies are right, we just saved hundreds of thousands of people's lives, families, of people affected by it, and we're going to save a ton of money. People work all their lives to save money, and many times it's spent in their last years in senior housing. And senior housing, it's a great profit, absolutely. But I think I'd rather be in senior housing and functional than senior housing and non-functional. So let's talk about what to do to prevent it, if the studies are right. Again, we're assuming the studies are right. Now, in Japan, this was not something that was even heard of for a long time, but suddenly there's been this upsurge, this increase in people with dementia. Now, maybe it's due to rising rates of obesity, increasing cholesterol, saturated fat, and iron from meat and other animal products. Too much iron is worse than not enough iron. And I have people come in, people that met women that are postmenopausal, men who don't menstruate, so we have no way of getting rid of iron in our body. It essentially just builds up and builds up. So one technique that I do personally is I donate blood every chance I can. Because as a man, I have no way of getting rid of iron. Now, I don't eat meat and dairy products. But dairy doesn't have any iron in it anyway. I don't eat meat, so I don't have a lot of iron coming in. I get it from my plants, but I want to make sure that my iron levels are normal. And every time I get tested, my iron levels are perfect. So even just eating a plant-based diet, my iron levels are perfect. But periodically, I have men come in, and their iron levels are low. And they say, the doctor put me on iron. This may be worse than low iron, because the men usually don't have low iron in postmenopausal women because we have no way of getting rid of it. And so the iron can be stored in our cells, and it oxidizes. Essentially, it causes rust to occur. That's a simple form of putting it. And the reason we store iron in our cells is we may not have enough copper. So new research is showing that if you take copper, and you can get that from certain foods, nuts, grains, beans, things like Dr. Joe's Super Greens doesn't have copper, but it's a great way to detoxify the liver. Dr. Joe's Essential Source, nitric oxide. So when you take these things, it's amazing the results. So for example, Super Greens. Okay, Super Greens has chlorella in it. Chlorella helps detoxify your liver. It's a great source of omega-3 fatty acids, which are necessary for brain function. And it has a chlorella and spirulina, which is great for the immune system as well. Now, if we look at something like Essential Source, Essential Source is, I consider it the granddaddy of all supplements. It's prebiotics, probiotics, digestive enzymes, complete multivitamin, dried fruits and vegetables in a powder form. I take a scoop of each every day. I don't know why you don't. So if you're not doing it, you really should. So this is one of the things that I do as part of my protocol, that when I get tested, I test amazing. When I donate blood, they test my blood. They say, your blood is so red. People aren't used to seeing my blood that red, that full of oxygen and iron, even though I don't eat any animal products. I take nitric oxide, increase the circulation to my brain. Nitric oxide is amazing. I love the stuff. And it gives me so much energy. It helps my brain work better, increases circulation to my body. So there are things that I do every day to keep my brain working. And I don't have any special genetics. My family wasn't, super scientists or anything like this. So, and I don't eat animal products. So we're seeing now, to circle back around again. Oh, by the way, all the supplements we talk about are on my website, drjoe.com, drjoe.com. And all my shows, including this one, will be on the website, drjoe.com. You just type in the search bar what you're looking for, and then chances are you're going to find many articles, blogs, shows that I've done. I want you to use my website as a great source of information. So I got back sidetracked there. We're talking about Japan and why the Alzheimer's were going up. Cases of Alzheimer's going up. Calories have gone up by 10%, but Japanese used to eat a lot of fish. Now they eat a lot more animal, and meat consumption has risen by 500% in the past several years, and plus about 10 times the rise in junky sweets, junk food. During that time span, rice consumption went down, but it's not so much that the rice was being protective, it was that the other stuff we feel has been damaging. So if you look across multiple countries, you see a similar pattern. Most important dietary link to Alzheimer's appears to be meat consumption, with eggs and dairy also contributing. Studies are pretty clear. It also appears in really tight correlation between Alzheimer's and per capita meat supply. Studies within countries uncovered similar things. Alzheimer's and cognitive decline associated with meat, sweets, fatty diets. Alzheimer's went up. Plant-based diets, associated risk went down. Alzheimer's is terrible. And I'm so passionate about this because I personally and my family never had anyone with Alzheimer's. However, I've worked with people, and I've worked with friends, and I've visited their parents. And when I've dealt with Alzheimer patients, and certainly in our office, people bring us Alzheimer patients all the time, and it just tears my heart out. And it didn't start the day it was diagnosed. It started decades earlier. This is going to be a hard sentence for me to say to you, and you may not want to hear this, you're causing it. In most cases, you caused it. And you're causing your end of life to be miserable, but you're also ruining your family and friends' lives as well. So stop it. Stop doing these things. Animal products tend to have more copper, lead, mercury, cadmium, and not a lot of folate, and they contain saturated fats and pro-inflammatory advanced glycated end products. We talked about that earlier. And all of these things raise the risk of Alzheimer's. But do we know the real cause and effect? The evidence that meat consumption is linked to Alzheimer's disease, there's strength in association. So we know there's a correlation with higher meat consumption and Alzheimer's. The causation directly, science is still looking at. But a lot of it appears to be clogging of the arteries. But the meat itself could have a causation. Now, again, it's correlation, not causation. Correlation means people that eat a high meat diet, higher risk of Alzheimer's disease. What's causing it directly, we're still kind of looking into. The fact that dietary changes precede the risk of Alzheimer's. The worse dietary changes you make, the worse it's going to be. We know that meat is a risk factor for other chronic diseases. Now we're starting to look at it for brain function. And again, years ago, Alzheimer's wasn't as prevalent as it is now because a lot of people didn't eat a lot of meat and dairy products. And if they did, it was organic meat. It was small amounts. Somebody said the other day, well, you're Italian. How do you stay so thin eating all that pasta? Well, if you go to Italy, you don't get mounds of pasta like you do here in America, all you can eat pasta dishes. You get a little side dish of pasta. Then you get vegetables, little piece of meat, a salad with every meal. That's the European way of eating. It's called, the French paradox. The French eat, rich foods, dairy products, and wine, and yet they have lower risk of heart disease. It's called the French paradox. Why is that? Well, they don't sit down and drink a bottle of wine. They don't go get drunk. They have a small glass of wine. They eat a lot of fruits and vegetables. They walk everywhere. And so there's other factors that can come into play that can help reduce the risk if you're doing these things. And it's such a simple concept. So if you read the reviews of damaging effects of high fats on brain and cognition, which I've read a lot of them, a number of factors are proposed to account for the high fat-induced damage to the brain. Oxidative stress, we talked about that, too much iron that causes oxidation. And you can get free radicals from many different things like cooking meats, smoking. Free radicals are just caused by bad diet. Insulin resistance. Saturated fat is directly linked to diabetes. And the mechanism that's proposed is that the saturated fat clogs up the body's ability to respond to insulin. So the way the body works with insulin, Insulin is released from the pancreas. It goes into the cell and unlocks the cell, kind of like a key. Opens up the cell and lets sugar in. If you are clogged up, if you will, with saturated fat, the key doesn't fit into the cell, so the cell can't open up and let the sugar in. So the cells become resistant to insulin. They just don't work. And so blood sugar skyrockets. And there's your type 2 diabetes. So it's not just sugar that's linked to type 2 diabetes. It's actually saturated fats. And we get that from animal products. Other mechanisms that could be inflammation, changes in blood vessels because the blood vessels get clogged. And these are based on studies in rodents, but when we move it over to humans, we seem to see the same studies. Those who only had low-grade clogging of the arteries, what we call stenosis, were pretty stable over time in terms of cognitive function, the ability to dress themselves, and other activities of daily living. Basic stuff. Those who had more clogging slipped over the years, and those who started out with the most brain hardening of the arteries rapidly went downhill. So the correlation here is between clogged arteries, oxygen not getting to the brain, amyloid plaque builds up, tau proteins. Again, this is all part of it. But that's the symptom. What's causing the amyloid proteins? What's causing these tau proteins? That's what we have to look at. And it seems to be directly linked to your diet. So chronic consumption of the standard American diet, SAD diet, SAD, and cholesterol may compromise our cerebrovascular integrity, and these blood vessels, that's the blood supply to the brain, get clogged up. So many times drugs are recommended, and pharmacological modulation of diet-induced dysfunction. I love that sentence. Pharmacological modulation of a diet-induced dysfunction. What that means is you caused it with your diet. Now let's see if we can get a medication to modulate the damage that you did. A famous man once said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." And we, as a society, as humans, oftentimes do things not realizing how damaging they are, how far-reaching this is going to be. And so that's why I get so passionate about it. I look at this, too, with chiropractic care. I had a patient come in the other day, 15 years old. Horrible skin lesions all over her body, probably eczema, and very shy because she didn't want to talk to people because it was all over her face, her neck, everywhere. And I had to sit down with the parents, and I personally took on this case, and I normally don't do that. But I sat down with them, and I said, we have to look at your daughter's diet. They're from Africa, so they're not used to American diets. And I said, you got to cut out the wheat and the dairy products. Well, she likes wheat and dairy products. I know she does. But let's try this. And I gave her my challenge. Give me 60 days and see if I'm right. And hopefully they're going to do it. It just happened this week. But I talked to them, and I think I convinced them that, yeah, do it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I see the same thing with chiropractic care and arthritis. I'll look at a knee, a spine, a shoulder, a hip, and I see the joints worn out. This took years to wear out to that level. And now people come in and say, Dr. Joe, fix me. Many times we can. Amazing results with neck pain, back pain, shoulder pain, knee problems. I had a kickboxing instructor come in the other day. She's 10 years younger than me. She's in her early 50s. And after her first adjustment, she said, I can squat down again for the first time in years. Now, this one was in amazing shape. And she ate well. But the problem was structural. The bones are out of place, rubbing up against each other. So we want to get to the cause of the problems. Vitamin B supplementation. Aging can cause cognitive decline due to changes in the brain cell, and we find that taking B vitamins might help that. So what I take every day, I take Dr. Joe's Super Greens, Dr. Joe's Essential Source, Dr. Joe B Complex, nitric oxide, omega-3 fatty acids, which I don't even have time to talk about. Oh, my God, they're so important for the brain. Vitamin D. I take digestive enzymes. I take other things at my age. I take hormone things to help my hormones. So all the supplements we talk about are on the website, drjoe.com. If you'd like to become a patient, if you have neck pain, back pain, digestive issues, nutrition concerns, we would love the opportunity to sit down with you, do an evaluation. Let's check the spine. Let's check the digestive system. Let's check your diet. And let's see what we can do to give you the best chance to live a long, happy, healthy life. I can't guarantee anything. But to me, I can't imagine anything more important than making sure my body is as healthy as it possibly can be. So if you'd like to make an appointment, drjoe.com. Normally the first visit in my office is $940. I've reduced that for my listeners and their friends to $299. Exam, x-rays, consultation, first treatment, going over the x-rays on your follow-up visit, and a complete nutritional evaluation. And then once we go over our findings, we'll say this is the protocol that we think is going to be best for you. And as far as finances go, we accept people with all insurances. It depends what your coverage is, but we accept you. Medicare, Ambetter, car accidents, sports injuries, workers' comp. We want to get you well and keep you well. And if you don't have insurance or crazy deductibles, which now seem to be the common, it's still the most effective, least expensive treatment for pain. A friend of mine went to the hospital the other day. He got billed. 3 of the services that they billed him for were wrong. They charged him 4 times what he should have been charged. And I went through the bill and I went, that's not right, that's not right, that's not right. Call him up and tell him this. And it was like $6,000 for a couple of hours in the hospital. Why wouldn't you want to prevent those things? So if you want to make an appointment, drjoe.com. Any questions you have, send them to me through my website, drjoe.com. I'm happy to answer your questions. In the Atlanta area, we have offices in Marietta, Duluth, Stockbridge, and West Cobb. Stop suffering. Let's get you as healthy as we can. Can I guarantee you're not going to get Alzheimer's or Parkinson's? No, I can't. But I can tell you that the studies are clear as day that the healthier you are, the lower the risk of these things happening. And I'm living proof of it. So I want to talk about vitamin B real quick. Research has found that supplementation of vitamin B was converted into a molecule involved in energy metabolism for the neurons, which are the nerve cells. And that was observed in a small but significant decrease in levels of amyloid plaque protein. That's the protein that builds up on the brain cells that causes Alzheimer's. So just by having enough B vitamins, no other changes whatsoever, just by having enough B vitamins, we saw that the buildup of the amyloid plaque was small, less, but still very significant. And the brain has to be able to metabolize energy. It has to be able to produce its own energy. We are not plugged into the wall. We have to generate our own electricity, and we generate it in the cells in something called the mitochondria. And the mitochondria is a very complex mechanism, but one of the things it needs is B vitamins. And so if you're getting enough B vitamins, that's important. Most people don't get enough B vitamins. Now, the nice part is about B vitamins, if you take them, like I take Dr. Joe's Essential Source every day, that has B vitamins in it. Then I take an additional B vitamin. If I take too many, of course, to a certain limit, I just pee it out. So B vitamins are water soluble, but we're showing now that they may help prevent the amyloid plaque that builds up on the brain, which is the hallmark of Alzheimer's. So why wouldn't you do it? So eat a healthy diet, maintain your weight, cut down on sugar, avoid the salt, drink more water. I know that sounds generic, and it is. If you want specifics, I'm going to give you a present. Go to my website, drjoe.com. Type the words 7 Deadly Sins of Nutrition in the search bar. Listen to that lecture. I gave that in California several years ago on the 7 foods I want you to cut back or cut out. After typing in the 7 Deadly Sins of Nutrition, then type in, after you listen to it, so what can I eat? I've got it laid out for you. We have over probably 4,000 hours now of podcasts and research on the website, drjoe.com. You can search it all you want, absolutely free. If you want to make an appointment to come see us, you can do it right on the website, drjoe.com. The Atlanta area, Marietta, Duluth, Stockbridge, and West Cobb. If you have questions, drjoe.com. If you're a podcast junkie, go to your podcast service, type in Dr. Joe for the health of it. Dr. Joe for the health of it. Hundreds of hours of podcasts there. And I want you to do this. Follow us on social media. We post health information. This is just one topic. We post information every single day. We have private coaching classes that we have. We have Facebook groups. We do everything we can to get the information to you. So Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter. Follow us on these. You're going to get so much information, it's going to blow your mind. In the past less than an hour, I gave you all the research out there that probably no one's ever talked to you about. Nobody ever talked about chiropractic care. Become a chiropractic patient. Most patients say, I wish I'd done this sooner. So, folks, I want to be your doctor. drjoe.com. Any questions, send them to me through the website. And again, drjoe.com. Catch you next time. Okay.
I've got several for you.
Oh, okay now. Well, it's tough. They didn't ask the first time. All right, I'll take them. What do you got?
All right, this one has a little bit of a backstory to it. This viewer's family member has Alzheimer's, which got progressively worse
Yes.
after he went under general anesthesia for a hip replacement.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Hear it all the time.
And their question is, if they need to go under general anesthesia, are there any precautions to take?
Wow. Yes. I watched my mother. Every time she had a surgery, she declined more and more and more. Now, she didn't go with full Alzheimer's, but I just saw her memory just wasn't there. So everything I just told you, yes. Listen to the 7 deadly sins of nutrition. So what can I eat? Supplement-wise, Super Green Essential Source, nitric oxide. I'd probably stop at about a week before the surgery. B-complex, all those are necessary for the brain. Glutathione, because they're probably on medication. That cleans out the liver. Men's hormone support, if it's a man, to help to keep the testosterone levels high. Enzyme support to help break down the food. So, yeah, there's a lot that can be done.
The next one is, when working out for a vegetarian, is it possible to build muscle by increasing plant protein?
Absolutely not. Look at me. I'm shriveled up. I'm near dead. My brain doesn't work. I've been vegan for 37 years now. The studies now are showing that plant proteins are more efficient than animal proteins. And in fact, most people who do animal proteins get too much protein and raise their risk of kidney disease, liver disease, high blood pressure, diabetes. So the answer is so many athletes are coming to the realization and switching to a plant-based diet. Tennessee Titans, half the team now is eating a vegetarian diet. These are professional football players. The world record, did I just see it? The world record for powerlifting was just done by a vegan. So the answer is, yeah, you're silly not to do that. Yeah, but no, you can easily build muscle on a plant-based diet. You don't need that much protein to build muscle. So, what else?
That leads us to our next question. What is a good source of plant protein? And would you suggest spirulina?
Spirulina, chlorella and spirulina are in the essential source, so it's a great source of protein right there. You don't need that much protein. Your body only needs about 8 to 10% of its total caloric intake as protein. A steak is 17, 19%, way too much protein. Tears up your kidneys, tears up your liver. Good source of plant protein is everything. What do cows eat? Cows eat grass. And look at how much protein they have. We eat their protein that they recycled from the grass. So if you want a source of protein, beans, nuts, seeds, those are high sources of protein. But even if you don't eat that, which you should, by the way, even if you don't, you're still going to do fine. Okay, you don't need a source of protein. You just need a source of food, which has protein. I know that sounds like I'm avoiding the topic, but I'm not. You could do well on fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds and do great. So, what else?
The next one is, what do you think about the Epstein-Barr virus? How do we know if we have it, and how do we treat it?
What do I think about it? I think it's great. Everybody should try it. No, it's a virus. It gets into the body. It makes us very tired. Okay. You could probably check a blood test. I'm not sure how to test for Epstein-Barr, actually. But to deal with it is taking the stress off the body. Sex is a big consumer of energy, but we don't have sex all day, every day. But digestion is a huge consumer of energy. Number 2, and animal proteins are the hardest thing to digest. So if you have Epstein-Barr, or you don't, either way, the treatment's the same, which is nice. If you don't, and you're eating foods that are hard to digest, meat, butter, cheese, yogurt, eggs, ice cream, pizza, meatball sandwiches, exhausting to the body, just exhausting, and burns up so much energy. So when you start going to a plant-based diet, fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds, it's so easy to digest. So for example, for lunch today, I had a big salad with tomatoes, I had an avocado, and I had some kale chips. Now you're thinking, that sounds so boring. I feel great. My brain is racing. I got energy. The patients who I see in the morning should get the same treatment as the ones I see in the afternoon, or vice versa. So if I'm going to have pizza and meatball for lunch, and I'm going to treat the patients in the afternoon, they cannot get the same quality care. So I do it for you, and I do it for me, and it's a whole lot cheaper too. And a lot of what I did was driven by money. I was so poor when I graduated college that I went to a plant-based diet by accident. I didn't mean to. So with Epstein-Barr, take the stress off the body. So alcohol, meat, sugar, dairy, coffee, soda, and artificial sweetener are the most toxic, most energy-draining foods. Go to the website, drjoe.com, type in "so what can I eat" and listen to that. Now for energy, B complex, absolutely. I'm sure we have some here. B complex, super greens, an essential source. Nitric oxide, adrenal support for inflammation. And then you might want to listen to the show we did on immunity. Just type in immunity in the search bar, and let's build up your immune system, because it's a virus. Antibiotics don't work on viruses, but your immune system does. And so Dr. Joe's Wellness Booster, Dr. Joe's Seasonal Tonic, this is Wellness Booster. This is amazing for keeping the immune system strong. I would say you take this every day. So yeah, the protocol is easy. So whether you have Epstein-Barr or not, and you're tired all the time, the treatment is the same. That's what's kind of nice, and my opinion. And then let's see what happens. I doubt I'm wrong. What else?
I had one more question about being vegetarian and working out.
Mhm.
They asked how much you should eat if you're working out.
To maintain your weight. It's just that simple. I know that sounds nebulous, but you only need about 1,300 calories a day of quality food to work out. Now, Donna, who, oh, by the way, Donna's here in the studio with me today. Donna does workout classes twice a week for free on Zoom. And all you have to do is register. It's very simple. So if you follow us on social media, you'll know when Donna has a class coming up. She'll post it, and all you have to do is she'll send you an email address, and she'll send you the link to it. It's absolutely free. There's no bait and switch. It's just Donna giving class. She doesn't get paid for it. It's her donation. Donna's been an athletic instructor for 35 years. 35 years. 40 years. Oh, this year 40, Donna says. It's a great workout. You do it at home. You can, turn off the camera. Nobody has to watch you. I can't keep up with her. When I take the classes, I do maybe 80%, 70% of what she does. I have to stop and take a break. You can do 5% of what she does. Doesn't matter. As long as you're doing something, and then you have organization. And then afterwards, we get together. If I take the class, I'm not available for every class. If I take the class, we have a question and answer session. We form little family, little communities. So you don't have to eat more food. You just need to eat good food. And if you're putting on weight, you're eating too much food. If you're losing weight, you're not eating enough food. So there is no answer. It depends on you and your metabolism. But fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds, you'll feel great. So follow us on social media at Dr. Joe Esposito, and Donna will send out a little link, and you'll say, "Oh, I got to register for it." Send her your email address. She'll send you the link, and you're on the list. You get the link all the time then. So, what else?
That's it.
You guys are awesome. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you very much. And please share these links when we send them out. Please share them to all your social media. Whenever we send you something, just share it. Because I appreciate you helping us spread the word. And I will then see you next week. Bye.